My name is Yvonne, and I just turned 24 last month. I always thought hard work would be enough to get me through college, until my parents emptied my savings account for my cousin Amanda's Ivy League dreams. Growing up, I was never the golden child, but my grandmother Martha saw something in me that nobody else did. When she passed away, I thought I had lost my only ally. Little did I know that Grandma had one final surprise that would change everything at our family reunion. If you've ever felt undervalued by your own family, stay with me. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. You'll want to see how this shocking betrayal turned into the most unexpected blessing of my life. I grew up in Lexington, a picture-perfect suburb just outside of Boston. Our house was modest compared to many in the neighborhood. A 3-bedroom colonial with a small backyard where my dad Thomas barbecued on weekends while my mom Diana tended to her flower garden. From the outside, we looked like the typical American family, but inside those walls, I constantly felt like I was competing for my parents' approval against someone who wasn't even there, my cousin Amanda. Amanda is the daughter of my mother's sister Grace and her husband Richard, a successful investment banker. Though we were born just 2 months apart, we might as well have been from different planets. Amanda had the kind of natural intelligence that made everything look effortless. By 3rd grade, she was already 2 reading levels ahead of everyone else. By middle school, she was taking advanced math classes and winning every science fair. Her bedroom wall at Aunt Grace's sprawling Victorian home was covered with ribbons, certificates, and trophies. My bedroom wall, on the other hand, had a few participation certificates and a single first-place ribbon from a 5th grade art contest. School was always a struggle for me. Words jumped around on the page, numbers got mixed up, and no matter how many hours I spent studying, I could never quite keep up. It wasn't until I was 16 that a particularly observant English teacher suggested I might have dyslexia. The diagnosis finally explained my struggles, but it didn't change my parents' expectations. When I brought home my test results, my mother simply sighed and said, "Well, Amanda never needed any special accommodations." The comparisons were relentless. Every Sunday dinner included an update on Amanda's latest achievements. Amanda made the honor roll again, my mother would announce while passing the mashed potatoes. Amanda was selected for the prestigious summer program at Johns Hopkins, she'd say over dessert. Meanwhile, my small victories went unnoticed or were quickly dismissed. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandmother Martha. Grandma was a force of nature, a woman who had built a successful chain of craft supply stores across New England after being widowed at 35. She hadn't gone to college herself, but had the kind of practical intelligence and determination that turned a single storefront into a regional business empire. Every Saturday, I would take the bus to Grandma Martha's cozy apartment above her original store. Those days were sacred to me. We would bake cookies in her tiny kitchen, and she would tell me stories about her business challenges and how she overcame them. Unlike my parents, she never made me feel like I was failing some invisible test. "You have something special, Yvonne," she would tell me, flour dusting her cheeks as she rolled out cookie dough. "You have an eye for what people really want and how to give it to them. That's not something you can learn in any classroom." When I helped out in her store, she noticed how I rearranged displays to catch customers' attention, how I could predict which seasonal items would sell best. While my parents were forcing me into SAT prep classes where I struggled to keep up, Grandma Martha was teaching me accounting basics, marketing strategies, and customer service skills. "There's more than one path to success," she would say. "Your cousin Amanda is climbing a ladder. You're building your own staircase." It was Grandma Martha who first started my college fund when I was just a baby. Each birthday and Christmas, she would add to it, and eventually my parents began contributing too. By my senior year of high school, there was enough to cover tuition at a state university for 4 years. It wasn't Harvard money, but it was my ticket to independence. When college acceptance letters started arriving spring of senior year, Amanda, predictably, got into all 8 Ivy League schools. I applied to 4 state schools and was accepted at 3. My parents' congratulations felt half-hearted when I decided on University of Massachusetts, Boston. "At least it's a 4-year degree," my mother said, as if I should be grateful for achieving even that much. Grandma Martha, though, took me out for a special dinner to celebrate. "You're going to bloom in college," she told me over pasta at her favorite Italian restaurant. Sometimes the later bloomers end up with the most beautiful flowers. I held on to that thought as I walked across the stage at high school graduation. Amanda was valedictorian, of course, giving a speech about reaching for the stars that had my Aunt Grace dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I was somewhere in the middle of the pack, just happy to have made it through with decent grades, despite my learning disability. That summer after graduation, I worked at Grandma's store full-time, saving extra money for books and spending money for college. I was finally starting to feel excited about the future. Little did I know that my parents had already made a decision that would derail everything I had worked for. August arrived with a flurry of college preparation. I had my class schedule, my dorm assignment, and a list of textbooks I needed to purchase. It was time to access my college fund and start making payments. My parents had always managed the account, assuring me it was growing steadily over the years. They had online banking set up, so one evening after dinner, I asked my father to log in so we could transfer the first semester's tuition. The look that passed between my parents should have been my first warning. "Let's talk in the living room," my father said, his voice unusually stiff. I followed them, still scrolling through my phone, looking at the UMass Boston payment portal. We sat down, and my mother clasped her hands in her lap, a gesture she only used when delivering bad news. "Honey," she began, and my stomach dropped. "There's been a change of plans with your college fund." My father cleared his throat. "The thing is, we've had to make a difficult decision as a family." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice small. My mother's chin lifted slightly. "Amanda got into Harvard. It's an incredible opportunity, but even with Richard's income and a partial scholarship, they were struggling with the full tuition. Harvard isn't cheap, you know." "What does that have to do with my college fund?" I asked, though I already knew the answer, a cold dread spreading through my chest. "We transferred your college fund to help Amanda," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It was a family decision." "A family decision?" I repeated. "Nobody asked me. That money was for my education." My mother's expression hardened. "Yvonne, be realistic. Amanda is at Harvard." "Harvard? Do you know how many doors that will open for her? She deserves this opportunity." The implication hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Amanda deserved it. I didn't. "She deserves it more than I deserve to go to college at all." My voice cracked. "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "UMass has payment plans. You can get student loans like most kids, or maybe start at community college and transfer. Part of growing up is realizing that life isn't always fair," my mother added, as if she hadn't been the one to create this unfairness. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The money that had been promised to me my entire life, the fund that Grandma Martha had started and contributed to faithfully, was gone. Given to my cousin, without my knowledge or consent. "Does Grandma know about this?" I demanded. My mother shifted uncomfortably. "We haven't discussed it with her yet. You know how she gets about these things. We'll tell her when the time is right." I stormed out of the house that night, tears blinding me as I drove to Grandma Martha's apartment. But when I arrived, her neighbor told me she was in the hospital. She had collapsed while working in her store and was undergoing tests. For the next 3 weeks, I was caught in a nightmare. I had to defer my enrollment at UMass because I couldn't make the tuition payment. I scrambled to apply for last-minute scholarships and loans, but most deadlines had already passed. Meanwhile, I spent every possible moment at the hospital with Grandma, whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. The doctors discovered late-stage pancreatic cancer. It had already spread to her liver. 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. The doctor told me gently when Grandma was sleeping. "Make the time count." I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the college fund. She was already so weak, and seeing her disappointment in her own daughter would only cause her more pain. Instead, I sat by her bed and listened to her stories, soaking up her wisdom like precious rain in a drought. 3 weeks later, Grandma Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep, holding my hand. I was devastated. The one person who had truly believed in me was gone. The funeral was held at the small church where Grandma had been a member for 40 years. The place was packed with employees from her stores, vendors she had worked with, and community members she had helped over the years. Amanda attended in a somber black designer dress, offering condolences that sounded rehearsed. "Grandma was so special," she said, patting my arm. "I'll miss our holiday dinners together. Holiday dinners. That was the extent of her relationship with the remarkable woman who had shaped my life. Amanda had been too busy with her academic pursuits and social activities to spend Saturdays baking cookies or learning business basics from Grandma Martha. After the service, my Aunt Grace cornered me. "I heard about your college situation. Such a shame," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But you must be so proud of Amanda. Harvard. And she's already been invited to join 2 honor societies." I nodded numbly, unable to form words that weren't screaming accusations. As guests filtered out of the church, I stood alone by Grandma's casket, making her a silent promise that somehow, someday, I would make her proud. I just had no idea how I was going to do that now. With my college plans derailed and my grandmother gone, I fell into a deep depression. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, the space feeling smaller and more confining than ever. The atmosphere at home was tense. My parents acted as if they expected me to have accepted their decision by now, to have moved on and adjusted my plans accordingly. I found a job as a barista at a local coffee shop, working opening shifts from 5 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. Then I'd go straight to my second job stocking shelves at a grocery store until 9 at night. The physical exhaustion helped numb the emotional pain, and every dollar I earned went into a new savings account at a different bank, one my parents couldn't access. My mother's attitude shifted from defensive to dismissive. "This is actually a good life lesson," she told me one morning as I gulped down coffee before my shift. "Learning to support yourself builds character." My father mostly avoided me, hiding behind his newspaper at breakfast or staying late at his accounting job. On the rare occasions we did talk, he'd suggest community college courses as if the betrayal had never happened. Meanwhile, Amanda's Harvard adventure played out in high definition on social media. Her dorm room with a view of the Charles River. Her study group at the historic Widener Library. Her wearing a Harvard sweatshirt at football games. Each post collected dozens of likes and comments, including enthusiastic responses from my own parents. "So proud of our amazing niece. Thriving at Harvard," my mother would comment, as if wanting to remind everyone of their connection to Amanda's success. I unfollowed Amanda eventually, but I couldn't escape the updates from my parents. Every phone call with a relative, every family dinner, somehow turned into a report on Amanda's latest achievements. Amanda got an A on her first political science paper, my mother announced over a silent dinner in October. Amanda's professor asked her to be his research assistant next semester, came the update in November. By December, when Amanda returned home for winter break, a dinner was organized to welcome back our Harvard girl. I was working both jobs that day but was told in no uncertain terms that I was expected to attend. The dinner was torture. Amanda held court at the table, describing Harvard traditions and name, dropping professors as if we should recognize them. My Aunt Grace and Uncle Richard beamed with pride while my parents nodded enthusiastically at every story. After dessert, Amanda cornered me in the kitchen. "I heard about your college situation," she said, her voice lowered to a confidential tone. "Such a shame. But if you want, I could help you with applications to community college. There are some decent ones around here, and maybe after 2 years you could transfer to a state school." Her condescension made my blood boil. She had no idea that her opportunity had come at the direct expense of mine. Or maybe she did know and simply thought it was the natural order of things, the exceptional Amanda deserving every advantage, even those stolen from her less remarkable cousin. "I'm doing fine," I said through gritted teeth. "Congratulations on Harvard." As winter turned to spring, I finally saved enough to move out of my parents' house. I found a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, Zoe, a nursing student, and Jasmine, who worked at a marketing firm. The apartment was small and the neighborhood wasn't great, but it was mine, paid for with my own hard-earned money. My parents seemed almost relieved when I moved out, as if my presence had been a constant reminder of their betrayal. Our communication dwindled to occasional text messages and obligatory family gatherings. Through it all, I missed Grandma Martha with an ache that never quite subsided. Sometimes I would dream about her, and in the dreams, she was always telling me something important, but I could never quite hear the words. One bright spot emerged when Barbara, an old friend of Grandma Martha's who had worked as the accountant for her stores, reached out to me. We met for coffee, and for the first time since Grandma died, I found myself talking to someone who truly understood what I had lost. "Your grandmother was the most remarkable woman I ever knew," Barbara said, stirring her tea. "And you know what? She saw so much of herself in you." Those words were a lifeline. Barbara encouraged me to start seeing a therapist, even offering to help with the cost. "Martha would want you to take care of yourself," she insisted. Dr. Laura, my therapist, helped me navigate the complex grief of losing both my grandmother and my educational future. "What your parents did was a betrayal of trust," she told me in one session. "You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to grieve." Slowly, I began to heal. I still worked both jobs, still saved every penny I could, but I also allowed myself small pleasures, a book from the used bookstore, a movie night with my roommates, an occasional dessert from the bakery Grandma and I used to visit. 6 months after Grandma's death, Barbara called me with an odd request. "The annual family reunion is coming up next month at your aunt and uncle's house," she said. "I think you should go." "Why would I want to do that?" I asked, baffled. "To hear more about Amanda's amazing Harvard life?" Barbara's voice turned mysterious. "Trust me, Yvonne, I think this is one family gathering you won't want to miss." Something in her tone made me curious enough to RSVP yes to the event I had been planning to avoid. Little did I know that this decision would completely transform my life. The annual Taylor family reunion had been held at Aunt Grace and Uncle Richard's estate for as long as I could remember. Their 5-bedroom house in Brookline sat on 2 acres of manicured grounds with a pool, tennis court, and a gazebo where the buffet was always set up. In previous years, I'd attended dutifully, making small talk with distant relatives and trying to avoid the inevitable comparisons to Amanda. This year, I almost turned around 3 times on the drive over. Only Barbara's cryptic encouragement kept me going. I parked my used Honda Civic between a Mercedes and a BMW, already feeling out of place. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my simple blue dress, the nicest thing I owned, and walked toward the sounds of conversation and laughter. The party was in full swing when I arrived. At least 50 relatives milled around the backyard, balancing plates of catered food and glasses of champagne. I spotted my parents near the pool, my mother in an expensive new dress I hadn't seen before, laughing with Aunt Grace. I grabbed a glass of water and found a quiet corner, hoping to remain invisible. No such luck. Within minutes, my mother's cousin Stephanie spotted me. "Yvonne, there you are. We haven't seen you at family functions in ages," she said, air kissing my cheeks. "So, are you in school now? Working somewhere exciting?" Before I could answer, she continued, "Amanda is just thriving at Harvard. Did you hear she made the dean's list her first semester? Extraordinary girl." This scene repeated itself with various relatives. Everyone wanted to know what I was doing with my life, but no one actually waited for an answer before pivoting to Amanda's achievements. I smiled until my face hurt and gave vague responses about taking some time to explore my options. An hour into this ordeal, Uncle Richard clinked his glass for attention. The crowd quieted, turning toward the gazebo where he stood with Aunt Grace, Amanda, and my parents. "We'd like to thank everyone for coming to celebrate another year of Taylor family togetherness," he announced. "And we have special reason to celebrate this year, with our daughter Amanda completing her first year at Harvard with top honors." Applause rippled through the crowd as Amanda stepped forward, looking perfectly polished in a crimson dress that subtly reinforced her Harvard connection. "None of this would have been possible without the support of our amazing family," Aunt Grace added, "especially Diana and Thomas, who made an extraordinary contribution to Amanda's education fund." My stomach lurched as my parents stepped forward, accepting congratulations as if they had done something noble. My mother was practically glowing with reflected pride. "When we learned that Amanda had been accepted to Harvard, we knew we had to do everything possible to make it happen," my mother said. "Some opportunities are too important to miss, and family means making sacrifices for those with the brightest futures." The casual cruelty of her words made me dizzy. In her narrative, redirecting my college fund wasn't a betrayal but a virtuous act of resource allocation to the family member with more potential. Amanda took the microphone next. "I just want to thank Aunt Diana and Uncle Thomas for their generosity. That money made all the difference in allowing me to attend my dream school instead of settling for my safety school." She laughed lightly, as if the idea of attending anything less than Harvard was a joke. I felt dozens of eyes flicker toward me, then quickly away. Everyone knew where the money had come from. Everyone knew I was the one who had to settle. Just as I was contemplating a hasty exit, a commotion at the garden entrance caught everyone's attention. A tall, distinguished man in his 60s wearing a crisp suit entered, carrying a leather briefcase. Barbara appeared beside him, guiding him toward the gazebo. "I apologize for interrupting," the man said, his authoritative voice carrying across the suddenly quiet garden. "My name is Edward Jenkins. I'm the executor of Martha Taylor's estate and her personal attorney for the past 30 years. My Aunt Grace stepped forward, her smile tight. "Mr. Jenkins, this is a family gathering. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting at a more appropriate time?" Mr. Jenkins consulted his watch. "I'm afraid Martha's instructions were very specific about timing and venue. She requested that certain information be shared exactly 6 months after her passing, at the first family gathering following that date. That would be today." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I remained frozen in my corner, heart pounding. Uncle Richard reluctantly invited Mr. Jenkins to use the gazebo. The attorney efficiently set up a laptop and small projector as the family gathered around, curiosity overcoming their annoyance at the interruption. "Before I proceed," Mr. Jenkins said, "I need to confirm that Yvonne Taylor is present." All heads turned toward me. I raised my hand slightly, feeling my face flush. "Excellent," he said, nodding in my direction. "Martha left explicit instructions that you must be here for this." He pressed a button on his laptop, and suddenly Grandma Martha's face appeared on the portable screen set up against the gazebo wall. My heart clenched at the sight of her. The video had been recorded in her apartment, sitting in her favorite armchair, looking tired but determined. "Hello, family," Grandma Martha began, her voice slightly raspy but strong. "If you're watching this, then I've been gone for 6 months, and Edward has followed my instructions to share this at the family reunion. I have some important things to say, and I wanted to say them in my own words." The garden was absolutely silent now, everyone transfixed by this unexpected appearance from beyond the grave. "I built my business from nothing," she continued. "When Harold died and left me with a single storefront and a mountain of debt, everyone told me to sell the shop and find a nice man to remarry. Instead, I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, until Martha's Crafts became Martha's Craft Emporium, and one store became 12 across New England." She leaned forward slightly. "I'm telling you this not to boast, but to establish that everything I've earned came through my own hard work, and I have the right to determine where it goes after I'm gone." My grandmother's eyes seemed to harden slightly. "It has come to my attention that Diana and Thomas took the college fund that was established for Yvonne, a fund I initiated and contributed to substantially over the years, and gave that money to Amanda for her Harvard education without Yvonne's knowledge or consent." Gasps and whispers broke out around me. My mother's face drained of color. "While Amanda is certainly a bright young woman with a promising future," Grandma Martha continued, "what was done to Yvonne was wrong. A promise was broken. An opportunity was stolen." She paused, taking a sip of water before continuing. "I've watched Yvonne grow up with challenges that Amanda never faced. I've seen her work twice as hard for half the recognition. I've witnessed her develop skills that can't be measured by standardized tests or grade point averages: empathy, creativity, business instinct, and determination in the face of adversity." Tears filled my eyes as Grandma Martha spoke directly to the camera. "Yvonne, if you're watching this, I want you to know that I see you. I've always seen you. You are so much more capable than your parents have ever given you credit for." Then came the bombshell. "Therefore, as my final act, I am leaving my entire estate to my granddaughter Yvonne Taylor. This includes all 12 Martha's Craft Emporium locations, my personal investments and savings, and my apartment above the original store. The total value at the time of this recording is approximately $4,200,000. The garden erupted in shocked exclamations. My Aunt Grace clutched her husband's arm for support. Amanda's mouth hung open in disbelief. And my parents, they looked as if they'd been struck by lightning. "This inheritance comes with 3 conditions," Grandma continued calmly through the chaos. "First, $1 million is to be set aside for Yvonne's education, whatever form of education she chooses to pursue. Second, 1 million is to be used as capital for her to start her own business venture when she's ready. And third, the remaining assets and business interests are to be held in trust, managed by my trusted friend and colleague Barbara Wilson, until Yvonne reaches the age of 30 or demonstrates to Barbara's satisfaction that she is ready to assume control. The video continued, but I could barely hear it over the ringing in my ears. $4 million, the family business, a future I never could have imagined just moments ago. All from the one person who had truly believed in me. As the video ended, Mr. Jenkins calmly closed his laptop, seeming oblivious to the storm brewing around him. "I have paperwork for Yvonne to review at her convenience," he said, handing me his business card. "Barbara will be serving as co-trustee until you're ready to take full control of the assets." And just like that, the power dynamic in my family changed forever. "I need to say one more thing," Grandma Martha continued on the screen, silencing the growing murmurs with her authoritative tone. "My decision isn't about punishing anyone or playing favorites. It's about recognizing potential where others have failed to see it." The camera zoomed in slightly on her face, capturing the determined set of her jaw, the feature I had inherited from her. "Diana," she addressed my mother directly, "I love you as my daughter, but I've watched you dismiss Yvonne's unique gifts her entire life. You've measured her against your niece using a yardstick that was never designed for her talents." My mother flinched visibly, her hand flying to her throat. "Thomas," Grandma continued, turning her attention to my father, "your silence when Yvonne needed an advocate wasn't neutrality. It was taking a side." Then her voice softened. "Richard, Grace, Amanda, you've done nothing wrong by accepting what was offered to you. But privilege comes with responsibility, and I hope this serves as a reminder of that." Grandma Martha shifted in her chair, leaning forward as if she could reach through the screen to touch me. "Now, Yvonne, let me tell you about the business you're inheriting. Each store has a manager who's been with me for at least 5 years. Barbara has all their information and performance reviews. The headquarters in Boston handles central purchasing, marketing, and accounting. We've been profitable every year for the past 22 years, even through 2 recessions." She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "But businesses need to evolve. The craft industry is changing, moving online, becoming more specialized. I've maintained our traditional approach, but you understand the younger generation of crafters. You'll know how to take Martha's Craft Emporium into the future." Grandma took another sip of water, then looked directly into the camera. "I've watched you rearrange store displays and predict trend cycles since you were 12 years old. I've seen you connect with customers in a way that can't be taught. When you helped me set up our first website and social media accounts, you instinctively understood what would appeal to our audience." My mind flashed back to those afternoons in the store, the joy I felt when my marketing ideas worked, when customers responded to displays I had created. While my parents saw only my academic struggles, Grandma had recognized my natural talents. "I'm not giving you this inheritance because you need rescuing," she continued firmly. "I'm investing in you because you have the vision and heart to build something even greater than what I created. My business was built on helping people create beautiful things with their hands. Your generation needs that more than ever in this digital world." The garden remained eerily silent, everyone transfixed by Grandma Martha's posthumous proclamation. I noticed Amanda's face had shifted from shock to calculation, her Harvard-trained mind likely already considering legal challenges. "Now, I know some of you might be considering contesting this will," Grandma said, as if reading my thoughts. "Edward can explain why that would be inadvisable, but the short version is this. My mind is sound, my decision is documented with extensive reasoning over multiple years, and I've made substantial charitable donations to remove any question of undue influence. Plus, I've recorded videos like this one every 6 months for the past 3 years, documenting my consistent intention." Mr. Jenkins nodded in confirmation, his expression suggesting he was prepared for any legal challenges. "Finally," Grandma Martha said, her expression softening again, "Yvonne, remember what I always told you about success. It isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I didn't build my business to show up the men who said I couldn't do it. I built it because I loved creating spaces where people could find inspiration and community." Tears streamed down my face now. I could almost smell Grandma's perfume, feel her weathered hand patting mine. "Use this opportunity wisely," she said. Get the education that suits your talents, not someone else's expectations. Build a business that reflects your values. And remember that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in lives touched. Her final words hit me like a physical force. I believe in you, Yvonne. I always have. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself, too. The screen went dark, and for several long moments, no one moved or spoke. The only sound was the gentle splashing of the pool and distant traffic beyond the estate walls. Mr. Jenkins broke the silence, his tone matter of fact, as Mrs. Taylor mentioned, I have extensive documentation supporting her decision, including medical certification of her mental competence at the time this will was created and every time it was reaffirmed. The trust documents have been reviewed by multiple independent attorneys. He turned to address my stunned parents directly. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, I should also inform you that Martha was aware of the college fund situation before her passing. She had planned this inheritance long before that incident, but it certainly reinforced her conviction that her assets would be best placed in Yvonne's hands. My mother finally found her voice, though it emerged as a strangled whisper. This can't be legal. I'm her daughter. Amanda is her grandchild, too. Mrs. Taylor has provided for you in the form of a modest annual stipend, Mr. Jenkins replied calmly. As for legal standing, I assure you that everything is in order. Challenging the will would be costly and, in my professional opinion, futile. Uncle Richard stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. This is outrageous. Amanda is at Harvard. She has proven her academic excellence. Yvonne has done nothing to deserve this windfall. On the contrary, Barbara spoke up, moving to stand beside me. Martha documented years of Yvonne's contributions to the business. There are quarterly reports noting her marketing suggestions, customer service innovations, and product selection recommendations. Martha considered this as much an earned business succession as an inheritance. I stood frozen, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. $4 million, 12 stores. A future I had never dared imagine was suddenly mine. All because my grandmother had seen value in me that my own parents had missed. As the implications sank in around the garden, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Relatives who had barely acknowledged me earlier were now looking at me with new interest. Amanda's friends huddled around her, whispering urgently. And my parents, they stood apart. My mother's face a mask of shock, and my father staring at the ground. In that moment, I realized that everything had changed. But the most important change wasn't the money or the business. It was the knowledge that Grandma Martha had believed in me enough to entrust me with her life's work. That validation was worth more than all the millions combined. The garden exploded into chaos the moment Mr. Jenkins closed his briefcase. Voices overlapped as relatives exclaimed, questioned, and speculated about what had just happened. I remained rooted to my spot, Barbara's steadying hand on my shoulder, the only thing keeping me grounded as the reality of my new situation washed over me. My parents recovered from their initial shock quickly, rushing toward me with expressions I'd never seen before, a strange mixture of disbelief, anger, and something that looked disturbingly like calculation. Yvonne, we need to discuss this as a family, my father said, attempting to guide me toward the house. There's been a terrible misunderstanding, my mother added, her voice honey, sweet in a way that made my skin crawl. Your grandmother was clearly confused about the college fund situation. Before I could respond, Amanda pushed her way through the crowd, her carefully composed Harvard poise completely shattered. "This is so unfair," she shouted, tears smearing her perfect makeup. "I'm the one who's proven myself. I'm the one at Harvard. What has she ever accomplished?" Aunt Grace was right behind her, clutching Uncle Richard's arm. "We'll contest this, of course. Martha must have been manipulated in her final months. She wasn't herself after the diagnosis." Mr. Jenkins stepped forward, his calm presence creating a small island of order in the chaos. As I mentioned, Mrs. Taylor anticipated this reaction. She made her decision with full mental capacity, documented by independent medical professionals over multiple years. Contesting the will would be expensive and, frankly, embarrassing for all involved. Uncle Richard's face reddened dangerously. "Are you threatening us?" "Not at all," Mr. Jenkins replied evenly. "I'm providing professional advice. The documentation includes Martha's detailed reasoning for her decision, spanning back 3 years. It references specific incidents and patterns of behavior that would become public record in any court proceeding. The implied warning hung in the air. Whatever Grandma Martha had documented about my parents' treatment of me, about the college fund, about years of comparison and dismissal, all of it would be exposed if they challenged the will. As the arguments swirled around me, something shifted inside. The hurt, confused girl who had accepted mistreatment as her due began to recede, replaced by something stronger. Grandma Martha had believed in me. She had seen my worth. And now, it was time I saw it too. "Stop," I said, my voice quiet but firm. The arguing continued around me. "Stop," I repeated, louder this time. Surprisingly, the garden fell silent, dozens of eyes turning toward me. I took a deep breath, standing straighter than I had in years. This was Grandma Martha's decision. She built that business from nothing. She earned every penny of that money, and she had the right to decide where it would go. My mother stepped toward me, her expression softening to the one she used when trying to manipulate situations. "Sweetheart, of course she did. But she was ill and clearly confused about certain facts." "Was she confused when you took my college fund without asking me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "Was she confused about how you've compared me to Amanda my entire life? Was she confused about how you called me dramatic when I was devastated about losing my education?" My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. My father tried to intervene. "Now, Yvonne, that was a family decision made for the greater good." "The greater good?" I repeated incredulously. "You stole my future because you decided Amanda's was worth more. That wasn't your decision to make." Amanda pushed forward again. "This isn't fair. I worked hard for everything I've achieved." I turned to her, feeling strangely calm now. "Yes, you did. And you were rewarded with praise, recognition, and a full ride to Harvard, courtesy of my college fund. Nobody is taking Harvard away from you, Amanda. But Grandma Martha's business? That's mine." Uncle Richard stepped forward menacingly. "We'll see about that. Our lawyers will." "Will what?" Barbara interrupted, her normally gentle voice sharp. "Will argue that Amanda deserves Martha's money more than Yvonne does? The same argument that was used to justify taking Yvonne's college fund. Do you really want that story in the public record, Richard?" My aunt and uncle exchanged worried glances. For wealthy people concerned with social standing, the prospect of their behavior being exposed in court was clearly disturbing. My mother made one last attempt, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "Yvonne, be reasonable. We're your parents. We can help you manage this inheritance. You don't know the first thing about running a business or handling this kind of money." In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what was happening. The same people who had decided I didn't deserve a college education were now positioning themselves to control my inheritance. "Actually," I said, stepping back from her, "I know quite a bit about running a business. Grandma made sure of that during all those Saturdays you thought I was just helping her bake cookies. And as for managing the money, that's why she appointed Barbara as co-trustee, to help me learn responsibly." I looked around at the family members who had dismissed me my entire life, who had accepted the narrative that Amanda was the only one with potential. "I'm leaving now, Mr. Jenkins. I'll call your office tomorrow to begin the formal process. Barbara, would you mind giving me a ride home?" "Of course," Barbara said, gathering her purse. As we turned to leave, my father called after me, his voice desperate now. "Yvonne, don't be hasty. We're still your family." I paused, turning back to face them one last time. "Yes, you are. And maybe someday we can rebuild what's been broken. But not today, and not if you try to challenge Grandma's wishes." Walking away from that garden party, I felt lighter than I had in years. The path ahead would be challenging, learning to manage a business empire, continuing my education on my own terms, healing from years of emotional damage. But for the first time in my life, I was walking a path that honored who I truly was, not who others thought I should be. Barbara drove me back to my small apartment in comfortable silence. When we arrived, she squeezed my hand gently. "Martha would be so proud of how you handled yourself today." "I still can't believe this is real," I admitted. "It's very real," Barbara assured me, "and there's so much to do. But not tonight. Tonight, just breathe and know that your life has changed forever." As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my phone buzzed with text messages from family members, some congratulatory, some passive, aggressive, some openly hostile. I silenced the notifications, set the phone aside, and looked around at my tiny living space. Tomorrow, I would begin a new chapter. Tonight, I would sit with the knowledge that Grandma Martha had given me not just an inheritance, but the ultimate vote of confidence. And that was the true wealth. 1 year later, I sat in my new office overlooking Boston Harbor, finalizing the fall course selection for my second year at Emerson College. I had chosen to major in business with a minor in digital marketing, a combination that perfectly complemented my plans for Martha's Craft Emporium. The view from the 23rd floor still took my breath away sometimes, not because of its beauty, though it was stunning, but because of what it represented. This office in the company headquarters had been Grandma Martha's, and now it was mine. Well, partially mine. As per the trust agreement, Barbara and I were running the business together until I turned 30 or demonstrated readiness to take full control. So much had changed in the 12 months since that explosive family reunion. After careful consideration and many discussions with Barbara, I had made my first major business decision, rebranding the company as Martha and Yvonne's, rather than completely changing the name. It honored my grandmother's legacy while signaling new leadership and direction. Under our joint management, we had already launched an e-commerce platform that complemented rather than competed with our brick and mortar stores. We'd created studio spaces in 3 locations where local artists could teach classes, and we'd expanded our product lines to include more sustainable and ethically sourced materials. The business was thriving, with first quarter profits already exceeding projections by 12%. As Grandma had predicted, my understanding of younger crafters and social media marketing proved valuable in modernizing the company while maintaining its core values. My education was flourishing too. With the freedom to learn at my own pace and with proper accommodations for my dyslexia, I discovered I was actually an excellent student. My business professors were often impressed by my real-world experience, and several had asked to use our company's transition as a case study. But the changes in my personal life were perhaps even more significant than my professional and educational achievements. I had moved into Grandma Martha's apartment above the original store, renovating it gently to suit my tastes while preserving its essential character. The kitchen where we had baked cookies together remained largely unchanged, though I'd upgraded the appliances. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something complicated but gradually healing. After several months of strained silence following the family reunion, my father had reached out first. We met for coffee at a neutral location, and he had done something I'd never seen before. He apologized. "I failed you," he said simply, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "I let your mother's fixation on Amanda influence how I saw you. I didn't protect you when I should have. And I'm sorry. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but it was a start. We began meeting monthly, rebuilding a relationship that had a different foundation than before, one based on who I actually was, not who he wished I would be. My mother took longer. Her pride had been deeply wounded, not just by losing control of her mother's fortune, but by the public acknowledgement of her favoritism. 6 months after the reunion, she requested a meeting. Unlike my father, she didn't exactly apologize, but she did make an effort. "I don't understand the business decisions you're making," she admitted. "But your grandmother's stores are doing well under your management. Perhaps I underestimated you." Coming from my mother, that was monumental. We were still finding our way toward a new relationship, one that might never be close but could at least be respectful. As for Amanda, her story had taken an unexpected turn. Halfway through her sophomore year at Harvard, she had suffered what her parents called a health crisis, but what mutual cousins revealed was actually a severe anxiety breakdown. The pressure to maintain her perfect image, combined with the shock of Grandma Martha's will, had finally cracked her carefully constructed facade. When she returned to school after a medical leave, she reached out to me via email. To my surprise, it wasn't to argue about the inheritance, but to ask for coffee. When we met, I barely recognized the subdued young woman who slid into the booth across from me. "I've been in therapy," she said without preamble. "Turns out being the perfect child comes with its own kind of pressure. I don't know who I am without external validation. I don't know what I actually want versus what everyone expected me to want." We talked for hours that day, having our first real conversation as adults rather than as competing cousins. Amanda was switching her major from pre-law to education, following a passion she'd always had but had suppressed because it wasn't prestigious enough. Harvard was my mother's dream, not mine, she confessed. I just never had the courage to say so. Our relationship was evolving into something unexpected. Not best friends, but allies of a sort. Both of us were learning to define success on our own terms rather than through our family's distorted lens. Aunt Grace and Uncle Richard remained distant, still smarting from what they perceived as an unjust distribution of wealth. I had extended an olive branch, inviting them to the grand reopening of our flagship store after the rebranding, but they had declined. Some wounds would take longer to heal than others, if they ever did. Outside my complex family dynamics, I had built a support network that sustained me. My therapist, Dr. Laura, had helped me work through the anger and hurt of years of favoritism and dismissal. My roommates from the small apartment had become dear friends who kept me grounded when the inheritance threatened to overwhelm me. And Barbara had become something between a mentor, a business partner, and the supportive aunt I'd never really had. Perhaps the most meaningful project I'd undertaken was the Martha Taylor Memorial Scholarship Fund. Using a portion of my education trust that I didn't need for my own schooling, I had established a scholarship specifically for students with learning disabilities who demonstrated entrepreneurial potential. The first 5 recipients had been selected, each receiving full tuition and mentorship from successful business owners with similar learning challenges. As I finalized my course selection and closed my laptop, my eyes fell on the framed photo on my desk, Grandma Martha and me in front of her original store on my 16th birthday. She was beaming with pride as I held up the hand-painted window display sign I had created. "You were right, Grandma," I said softly to the photo. "Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." The intercom on my desk buzzed. "Miss Taylor, the marketing team is ready for the holiday planning meeting," my assistant's voice announced. "I'll be right there," I replied. Before heading to the conference room, I paused at the window, looking out at the city below. The past year had taught me that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in self-worth. That family could be defined by love and support rather than blood. That sometimes the greatest gift isn't what you're given, but the belief someone has in who you might become. I had lost my grandmother, but in her final act of love, she had given me something precious, the chance to discover my own value in a world that had tried to convince me I had none. Have you ever had someone believe in you when no one else did? Someone who saw potential in you that others missed? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of finding self-worth despite others' judgment resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more stories of triumph over adversity. Remember, sometimes the people who underestimate you are the greatest gift. They challenge you to discover just how capable you truly are. Thank you for listening, and I hope my story helps you recognize your own unique value.